Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our latest industry roundtable on building belonging in early career talent. There are a lot of familiar names and faces on the call, so hi to everybody that I know very well. For anyone I don't know yet, my name's James Hooper. I've got the privilege of managing the Asia Pacific region for Development Beyond Learning. I've been in the learning and development space for about 15 years now in a lot of different capacities. And have been in the early career space for about the last 3.5, almost 4, which has been going very, very quickly. So a huge thank you to everyone for giving up your valuable time to join us. This session follows on from our previous event last year, which was our Future Talent Pulse workshop that shared the research from our global survey on how early career talent leaders were feeling about the future of graduate development as a result of the COVID pandemic. And there were 3 key themes that came out of that research and workshop as priorities to support graduates through the next period. And they were a strong focus on building remote working capabilities, building belonging, and building mental well-being. For anyone not at that session, please don't worry, it's certainly not prerequisite knowledge, other than to share that from those 3 key themes, we've already tried to address remote working capabilities and have released a great product suite around that I'm sure most of you have already got the details of. Anyone who doesn't, please drop me a line and we're happy to share it. And based on further feedback from you and the industry, we've now selected belonging to be the next topic that we will dive into, which is the focus of today's workshop and will be the focus of another product suite to support that initiative coming out very shortly. And then we will then, in a couple of months' time, be looking to deep dive back into the well-being topic and focus on that. So I'm very pleased today that our founder and chairman, Josh Mckenzie, is able to join us from sunny Glasgow to present our content today. Hi, Josh, how are you going?
Well, James, well.
Is it sunny in Glasgow at this time of night?
Absolutely not.
There you go. It probably won't be in the morning. Very glad to have you join us. I'm sure a lot of you know Josh. He'll introduce himself in a moment. And just before I hand over to Josh to introduce himself and kick us off, 2 final things to share with you. One is that we have a wonderful guest speaker joining us today. Around 30 or 40 minutes or so into the session, I'll be welcoming Jane Richardson from RSM to the conversation. Hi, Jane. How are you this morning?
Hi there, James. Very well, thank you.
Lovely.
It's nice and sunny here in Sydney, so.
All right.
That's all we can ask for. So thank you all. I think that's it from me. Josh, if you're all ready, then I would love to hand over to you to kick us off.
Great. Let's rock and roll. Hi, everyone. Josh Mckenzie here, founder of the DBL Group, best known for Development Beyond Learning. And we are, as you know, because you turned up, going to be exploring the topic of belonging in a virtual world. And before I kind of get the slides going and that sort of thing, I guess we have with offices in Sydney, London, Singapore, and DBL accredited trainers around the world. Our lens on the impact of the pandemic has been one that's been truly global and quite diverse. And if there's anything that it has shown us is that it has been not at all democratic or reasonable or predictable in terms of how it's impacted people's lives and how it's impacted countries and communities and companies, organizations, and then individuals as well. And I guess what I mean by that is everyone's experience is different. Even in the same company, or even in the same country, people's experiences have been so diverse and so different. And in fact, to increase a sense of belonging with our own team, we realized a month or 2 ago, we didn't realize it a month or 2 ago, but we started talking to the team a month or 2 ago about how the 19 or 20 of us that are on staff are living in 19 or 20 different versions, I guess, different experiences of what's going on. And so in the spirit of, and when we think about the essence of creating a sense of belonging, what's really, really important is that we recognize that everyone's experience is unique and that your approach needs to be as personalized as possible, as is practical. And when we particularly start talking about looking after young people, and helping them through the transition that they are going through, which is already a difficult transition from education to work, made even more difficult by maybe the last year, and they're now coming into virtual work role or a hybrid team situation or whatever it might be. That creating that sense of belonging has become maybe even more important than it already was. Throw into the mix the efforts the industry has made in recent years, I should say, around diversity and increasing the diversity of our cohorts. And you've got almost a perfect storm, I guess, of a real need to think about how we create belonging. And so we're here to, I guess, share some of our research, offer up some principles and some things to some things to take away. We take a very development lens on that issue, clearly being development beyond learning. And so we will finish with some thoughts around what are the areas that you can sort of deliberately develop your interns and grads in to help them create belonging for themselves and also help other people do the same. And throughout that, really want to make sure that we have a conversation as well. And what we've realized, and I'm sure you've had this experience on many other virtual sessions like this, ours and others and your own, that actually a large part of the value isn't just the stuff in the slides. It's actually the chance to talk to people who you maybe would not normally get to talk to about issues that maybe you don't normally get to talk about for an hour or so. And so please do use the chat room. I know we've heard that. I mean, how many times have you heard in the last year, use the chat room? Like many. And I want you to feel this morning, your time, because it ain't morning here. I want you to feel this morning that that you belong in this conversation, and that your perspective, your lens, your contribution, your question is your question, your thought is highly valued. I am coming to you from the United Kingdom, Australian born and raised, moved to the United Kingdom 6 or 7 years ago, spent that time in London. When the pandemic hit, we thought, let's get out of here. To cut a long story short, coming back to Australia seemed like a difficult thing to do, apparently. So we actually have moved up to country Scotland. So I'm coming to you from a little seaside town just outside of Edinburgh on the ocean, where we're raising our girls, and they're going to school with their cousins and having a great old time. It is extremely windy here tonight. So if you hear weird noises, that is the Scottish wind buffeting the house at about 10:30 at night. But hopefully that won't be an issue for us this evening. And great to see some familiar faces in here as well. I'm going to share some slides, and we're going to get going. All right, James, can I have a thumbs up from you? That look all right? Okay, great. All right. So we are, for those of us who maybe already know or have known us for a little while, we're on a really big mission to support 1 million young people every year by 2025. We believe in the idea of growth and personal growth. We believe that through growth, we can be the best versions of ourselves, and that young people need the skills to grow themselves more than ever. We believe in opportunity. I believe that talent is largely equal and opportunity is not, that young people need more opportunity to bring their talents to the world, and we're here to help them do that through their skill development. And we also believe in our role in the world, and that our actions and inactions count, and that business should be used as a force for good. And this is the good that we hope to bring to the world. What that means practically speaking, and in terms of how we work with our client partners, is that we are in the business of human skills development for people in change and transition. We have an unparalleled, we still believe to this day, an unparalleled heritage in early talent development. And that's supported, our work is supported by behavioral science and our team of first-class trainers around the world. And last calendar year, we reached around about 120,000 students, interns, and graduates in 42 different companies around the world. And when the pandemic hit, we reached out to around 10,000 pro bono through free virtual sessions, the Work Ready virtual experience, which in Australia is hosted with Grad Connection, and other such initiatives. More recently, we've picked up a couple of awards for our work during this time as well. one with an energy company that's really committed to changing the energy supply in Europe and going green, which is fantastic. Our supplier partnership with them picked up an award last year, and recently an award for the External Learning Solution of the Year with the Learning and Performance Institute. So that's a little bit about who we are. But today we're going to be covering these things. What is belonging? Why does it matter? What about virtual belonging? And thinking about some principles around supporting hybrid belonging, recognizing that in Australia, we are now looking towards a period of hybrid working. Some of your cohorts might need to still be at home, some are going to be in the office. There's chances of going in and out of lockdown depending on the state, borders opening and closing. So this idea of hybrid working is not going away in the short term from forces that maybe we can't control, but even from maybe forces that we can. It looks like some form of virtual or hybrid working is here to stay. We're going to finish with this idea of you making one commitment, because we know from behavioral science and a psychology point of view that if we make a commitment and share that with another group of people, our chances of following through on that are higher. And so when we get to the end, we'll be asking for one thing you are committed to doing when you go back to the office, get off the call, go downstairs to the lounge room, whatever it is for you. What's that one commitment for you to make? So what is belonging? I think we were just talking before we got on this call actually about what's going on in the UK with the Royals actually, and I'm not going to get into an hour-long discussion about the Royals, but what a week to be talking about belonging. And there's the story of an incredible young woman and her husband who clearly didn't feel they belonged. Now, whatever's true and not true and all of that sort of stuff, we'll never know because the Royals stay silent. But what a week to be talking about this idea of belonging to an organization. This is so relevant and so relevant. It would have been relevant anyway in our industry, given the efforts made around diversity in our recruitment. It would have been relevant anyway. And now in this virtual and hybrid world, even more relevant as well. And what I would like you to do is throw in the chat box right now, what does belonging mean to you? Let's get our heads into it. This will help us sort of get into the topic, whatever your morning has been. Maybe it's been busy, a little bit hectic. Maybe maybe you had to drop kids at school, or maybe you forgot to get your coffee, or whatever it is. There's some people dialing in from Perth at 6:30 a.m. So this will help us get our heads into belonging. If you dive into the chat room now and tell us a little bit, in your perspective, what does belonging actually mean to you? And then I'm going to get James to share some of what is being said. It's something that means something different to everyone, and I'm happy to say we've got a really, I think, a cracker of a definition coming up in the next slide as well. But what does it mean to you, James? What are we seeing?
Brill. Well, we've got a heap of stuff coming in here, Josh. A lot around being connected, feeling welcomed, a lot of that community feeling, shared values, comments around fitting in, inclusion, feeling included, stuff around being comfortable as well, feeling personally comfortable and connected, lots of connecteds, shared vision and mission, a part of a group with a clear purpose. Again, presumably so that people can choose whether to align to that purpose and then generate that personal connection. Yet working for common purposes, feeling valued. Yeah, feel like I'm safe, a home base from which we can encourage and challenge each other to explore and grow. Love that. And yeah, being recognized and lots of things. Yeah, Josh, acceptance, feeling valued. Really great comments.
Fantastic. And you'll notice that a lot of those are emotional responses, and something we're going to get onto in just a moment is that belonging is essentially an emotional response. And this next definition comes from Anita Sands, who spent a long time at UBS and is more recently involved in a number of boards, including being an advisory board member on Arianna Huffington's Thrive Global organization. And we love this definition. Diversity is a fact. The numbers are what they are. inclusion is a choice in terms of you decide whether to include someone or not, but belonging is a feeling. And when we look back at what we've all now put in the chat room just in the last few moments, a lot of those are tied to how it feels. I feel safe. I feel recognized. I feel like I'm part of something with a greater purpose. I feel like it's something that I can. I think there was the one in there, James. It was home base that we can explore. A lot of that is a feeling. And while for a number of years now, lots of industries have been very, very focused on diversity and then inclusion, and then there was like D&I and like, no, it's I&D, or no, it's actually B, it's belonging, that comes after ID, B, whatever it might be. We're now moving into a conversation, I think, around, okay, we've increased the diversity on whatever metrics and groups that we might have been focused on. We're making efforts to include, but at the end of the day, does the person feel like they belong? That's ultimately the test, and largely maybe a more difficult test to understand, which is why it's important to understand really, I think, what belonging is. And as I said, it's an emotional response. You either feel like you belong or you don't, or there's obviously varying degrees, but it has a lot to do with your relationship with the organization and your relationship with the people around you. It's been found, I guess, to be tied to fairness, and what that's really talking about is when you feel like you are then treated fairly in that environment, you feel like you belong. However, if that fairness is ever broken or lost, you start to question, do I belong here? Because that didn't feel very fair, which is why it's also linked to trust. Do I trust the people around me? Do I trust the organization? You think of a group, maybe as a child or a teenager or in your adult life, that you've really felt like you belong to. Maybe it's your friendship group, maybe it's your work team, maybe it's a community organization, maybe it's your family. You will feel like you are treated fairly, and you would feel like that you can trust and do trust those people as well. And it is ultimately enhanced by a sense of empathy and behaviorally a sense of flexibility as well. Empathy in terms of understanding the people and the environment and the organization around you, but also a willingness to be flexible to create that sense of belonging as well. And when we look at why does belonging matter, there are lots of different reasons, both commercial, personal, and a really interesting piece around health, which I really want to share with you as well, which again, pertinent, given the world is still battling a pandemic. But why does belonging matter? So a heads up, this is a slide that if you're trying to build a business case to the senior stakeholder, this is where you get the iPhone out and take a photo of the business, the photo of the business case, because these stats are pretty cool. So when people feel they belong, performance has been found to lift by 56%. Staff turnover can decrease by 50%. Sick days have been known to decrease by 75%. And employer promoter scores can increase by upwards of 160+% as well. I mean, if that's not a sort of argument, albeit very high level business case for creating a sense of belonging in organizations, I don't know what is. And I hope that, and we hope that over the next coming sort of years, that the conversation around inclusion and belonging kind of hits a tipping point that maybe diversity did. When diversity moved from being kind of just like the ethical kind of right thing to do, and there was, at most maybe some board level quotas around gender, it then hit a tipping point when the business case got proven. I mean, there's lots of research out there now that can show the bottom line impact, positive impact of having a diverse workforce. Once that started coming out and hitting boardrooms, it hit a tipping point. Everyone got their mandate. let's go and be more diverse. I hope inclusion and belonging starts to do that as well, because without it, we don't draw out the benefits of the diverse workforce to begin with, but also in this environment when we're all here to help young people make great career choices and get started on in their careers and hit the ground running and do that really well. So just through a lens of looking after young people, this is super important as well. And it does provide benefits to those people. When we feel we belong, we are twice as likely to get a raise. It has been found, and 8 times more likely to be promoted throughout our career, because when we belong, we feel we belong, we can be closer to the best versions of ourselves. Our relationships are strong, we are productive, we are operating on a bedrock of trust, and benefits flow from that for both the company and the person. But here's the super cool bit. When I got shown this, I thought, this is cool. Like, okay, business performance, personal performance. Okay, yeah, that's all great. But one of our team values at DBL is actually human, and we really give a damn about our people. This next piece of research that we found that belonging is actually good for our health. This is cool. This really get. I'm not sure if you can tell. It's like 11 o'clock at night, and I'm pumped about this. Belonging is good for our health. It has been found because belonging is largely influenced by the positive relationships we have around ourselves. It has been found, if we go from left to right here, to help reduce cardiovascular issues, increase our immune system, not a bad thing during a pandemic, I guess, and decrease. I have a positive relationship with hormones that create a sense of safety and happiness and decrease of stress as well. So in this world where there's a more of a push to, I guess, put people up alongside profit and value culture and value how we look after people, there's a business case, there's a personal performance kind of career case for helping people feel like they belong. And if that's not enough, it helps us be healthier as well. I think this is really exciting. And again, getting back to young people and early career talent, we know mental health is an issue for young people, and all sorts of other things are issues for young people. Anything that we can be doing to help our young people start their careers in a mentally, emotionally, and physically healthy way has got to be good for their personal performance and ultimately their business performance as well. And that's what MIT found. Having a sense of belonging means feeling safe and valued, for embracing what makes us different, what makes us happier and more productive. We're also healthier and better able to cope with stress. Not belonging, on the flip side, is among the strongest predictors of turnover. And before we move on, James, anything happening there in the chat room, and/or do people? Is there anyone who wants to jump in with a thought, a feeling, a question, a comment? But James, what's happening in the chat room?
Thanks, Josh. The chat room is quiet, and I think the chat room is quiet because everybody like me is just quietly enjoying and relating to a lot of what you're saying, to be honest. So in place of the chat room, is there anybody that would love to come off mute, share a thought, an observation? Please feel comfortable to do so. If everyone jumps together, I might manage it differently, but let's give it a go anyway. Feel free to come off mute and jump in with anything as of now.
In the meantime, we might move on, but please, if you want to jump in, flag yourself in the chat room there. So I think that's enough about why belonging matters. I imagine I'm kind of singing to the choir here as well. One of the things I love about the early talent and the early career in the graduate industry is that it attracts people on the both supplier side and the employer side on people who really care. I think you've got to be in this industry. You really care about the future of young people and the positive impact of the work our industry does, and so it makes sense that makes sense that a sense of belonging, particularly in this environment, is a priority. So what about virtual belonging, and what has the pandemic and this now shift to virtual working and hybrid working maybe done done to that? Lisa Patrick, who's done a lot of work in diversity and belonging, pointed out last year that humans by nature have a primal need to belong. Even before the outbreak of COVID-19, the remote environment, while appropriate and practical for many types of work, was not conducive to building relationships among co-workers. And I just want to touch on that primal need to belong for a minute. I think you can strip back almost any, or at least a lot of studies of people, be it anthropology or personal development or leadership development or culture or whatever it might be. And you will find somewhere some sort of reference or basis that right since the beginning of time, people have had some sort of need to belong. It is not in our DNA to be alone. And that is why when you are too much alone, you are more susceptible to depression. Like, it's not a good thing. That is how we are wired. We have a need to feel like we belong. And even if you go right back to, the primal versions of humans, there was safety in numbers. Right through to modern day life, we pursue friendship. Some people pursue more friendships than others, but we don't pursue isolation if we are healthy. And so right back, well before COVID-19, I think throughout the history of humans, period, we have a primal need to belong. So it made sense that the move to remote and virtual work, particularly in the last year or even prior, was always going to challenge that. And we have a task on our hands now as a global workforce, given how much talk and decisions are being made around not returning to offices full time. We have a task to make relationship building, which not everyone finds easy at the best of times, possible and constructive and conducive to do remotely or in a hybrid fashion. And again, when we get back to the context of young people, this transition to work is already a difficult one. And from our years of experience in development, there's nearly always parts of graduate development programs that are about communication, relationship building, managing your manager, networking, all this relationship driven stuff. So if belonging is important, that stuff becomes even more important because of this primal need for belonging. There was a piece of research, let's face it, there was lots of research done last year. Who didn't do some research? Everyone's researching by a group called Rsm. I think it was around 400 or 500 professionals across multiple different industries. And there are some numbers there you can see for yourself. 43% miss socializing with others, 15% miss face-to-face meetings. I mean, who misses meetings? But now we miss meetings because we don't get to give someone a hug or look them in the eye or whatever it might be. 14% missed communicating with others, etc. 10% missed some sort of structure. I mean, that's just a tiny little insight into some of the costs of remote working and some of the impacts, I guess, on belonging. And what we'd like to do is explore that even further with some of our research and some of the principles we'd like to sort of lay out. And before we do that, James, I'm going to hand back to you because it'll be great to have a conversation with Jane from RSM and just get a bit of insight into Jane and her team's experience in this sense.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Josh. So as discussed, we're very fortunate to be joined by Jane Richardson this morning. For the last 4 years, Jane has been the National OD and Learning Manager for RSM, one of Australia's leading professional services firms with around 30 or so offices nationally. Jane's got over 15 years experience in the financial and professional services sector. She has a background in HR, a master's in HRM, and is passionate about all things learning and culture change related. And specifically, Jane's been recently rolling out a digital learning strategy. and working on the onboarding and redesign of RSM's career pathways, particularly focused closely on the early career talent journey within the RSM Grad Program. So Jane, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and how are you?
thank you very much. And great introduction there. I was kind of looking, who's that Jane you're talking about there? But yeah.
I had that myself recently. It's always most interesting and awkward being introduced by somebody else, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh,
We're glad
brilliant.
to
And
be
how are you
here.
going
And
today, Jane?
well, I think this is such a important topic, and yeah, I'm really glad to be invited to be part of the conversation on this. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So Jane, before we kick off, for everyone's benefit, I've got 3 questions that I'm going to ask you just for some short answers. So everyone knows what's coming. Those questions are going to be how the challenge or opportunity, more so, of encouraging greater cultures of belonging has been seen within RSM in general. I'll ask you about what actions or any initiatives that you've been able to implement or put in place so far, and then what you think about any future actions or initiatives that are in the pipeline that you'd love to put in place. But before we dive into that, I just thought, would you be able to maybe just for half a minute, just share a couple of details about the RSM Graduate Program, just to give everyone a little bit of context to put your thoughts into, if that's okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, James. So we've got 136 grads on a 12-month program, which recently commenced, and we obviously in partnership with DBL on this journey. Our grads are actually spread across regional and city offices and in multiple divisions and disciplines. So, you know, we've got people working within that business advisory through to audit, being that RSM is a professional services firm. We kind of offer a number of services in that space with client groups ranging from banking through to farming. So we've really got that kind of multifaceted approach, both in the way that the firm runs and obviously the grads who are currently undertaking the program with us.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jane. And I think to Josh's earlier point, I believe RSM has for a while now been on a journey of trying to build more diversity and hire for more diversity as well. So that's been the case for a fair while, I believe.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely been a big focus in that area, as with, I'm sure, lots of other firms. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, in that case, that leads us into our first question very nicely. So, Jane, is there anything you can share with us about how this opportunity of encouraging a culture of belonging has been seen within RSM in general? And I mean, feel free to talk about the graduate program and more broadly and culturally across the organization as well. But anything in particular you can share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, probably sort of building on what Josh has mentioned around that belonging piece. I think, you know, as a firm, we're probably experiencing many similar challenges as other organisations. I guess, you know, for us, we have 5 different generations in our workplace at the moment. We have 30 offices serving different client needs, as I mentioned before, and across multiple divisions and locations, both within regional and city. And, you know, with all of that, there's kind of that national firm and one firm approach. So I think it's kind of very much seen like potentially you've got that dichotomy of difference. And it's very much around sort of leaning into that and recognising that one size doesn't fit all, and we need to kind of work within that complexity. And I think, you know, the same goes for belonging, as we just saw on that chat, even with you know, a few comments there. It's very personal. Belonging is something that, you know, one person is going to probably feel and have a different experience to somebody else. So I guess our role as a firm and as leaders is very much around helping to sort of set the scene up and set up what I guess we're trying to do here at RSM is those communities of practice where we really do sort of provide opportunities for our people to foster and grow that sort of sense of belonging. And I guess all of that is layered with that piece you kind of mentioned in that last slide there around pivoting to that more virtual environment, where we've obviously had to roll out a virtual program. And I guess what's come out of that is some things that we probably didn't even know would when we kind of set off on this path. I guess we did have a virtual learning strategy in place, but things change all the time, don't they? And kind of quite like a quote from, I don't know if you've heard of Fiona Robertson. She's got a great book on the rules of belonging. But one of her quotes there, and I have to say I'm a bit of a quote junkie, so you might get a few of these along the way, that culture is changing as a result of COVID. So are you going to let it be accidental, or are you going to make it deliberate? And I think this is really important piece for firms and organisations in encouraging that culture or that sense of belonging. We really do need to kind of make that deliberate change.
Could not agree more. And also, Jane, what a wonderful segue into my next question. I'd love to say we planned that between us, but it's totally organic. But on that, I love a good segue. That actually leads us nicely into, well, in order to be as deliberate as we can and to try to help move that culture where we'd like it to be rather than where it lands organically, what have you found that you've been able to do so far on a practical level to try to drive those cultures and practices of belongings? And also, as you said, how have you found them working in practice? Because it's all a journey of improvement. So anything in particular that you've been doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, there's probably three main things that we probably have been focusing on, and it's nice again to see that what we are doing is kind of what others are probably thinking around this piece around belonging. And I guess, our role again is very much around helping to build those foundations for the grad. So the first one that we've probably been working through is that piece around connection and how important it is for us to help find ways to facilitate our grads to start creating those social bonds. And I think, that big challenge when we first set off on this journey was we needed to have a virtual program. It wasn't possible with 30 offices across the whole country to bring all of our grads together as we would normally do. And I guess what's come out of that is something that actually happened, which we, like I mentioned before, we didn't even realise would, is, for example, we have Port Lincoln office, and where normally those grads would come together in part of a large cohort, and 136 of them would have a week together to start off our grad program. But instead, everyone had to sit within their individual offices. And but what actually came out of that was in Port Lincoln, for example, they actually were setting up their local connections from day one with morning teas. We had individual group MS teams. We had local events in the local offices. And I think, we've already started to get that feedback from our grads saying that they're actually feeling a lot more connected very early on in their kind of their grad journey. So I think that's one thing around that connection piece. The second is very much around culture as well. And again, that's something that's really, again, quite personable, but we really need to help try and create that right environment to develop those trusted relationships, and those relationships that they'll build not just with their peers but also with their managers. And something that we did in that space early on as well was creating a manager session and a manager briefing, which helped the managers kind of set expectations around what we actually expect of our managers as much as what we expect of our grads as well, and highlighting to them very much that the needs of our Gen Zs and our millennials are very different, and we need to kind of understand their motivations and what kind of matters to them, and sort of help their managers in that connection piece. And I guess the
That's
third, probably the most important thing, has been very much around that sense of purpose, and that again comes up in belonging time and time again. And I think we're still on that journey around purpose, but really kind of helping our grads understand their purpose and the wider vision and values of the firm. And that's again going to be very personable to individual grads, but what we really want to do again is help them understand the environment in which they work in and get a feel for our organisation, and sort of the importance of purpose being something that we need to kind of continue to sort of build and grow throughout their career. And one of the great things that we did at the start of the grad program again was that connection piece with our chairman, Jamie O'Rourke. And funnily enough, he actually started off as a grad himself, so he probably can sort of relate to that that piece around starting to understand those wider visions and values of the firm.
Yeah, 100%. Nothing quite as powerful as harnessing authority bias of our senior stakeholders to talk about these importance of belonging, of soft skills, of human skills. Jane, that kind of leads me into our third question, I suppose, and I've got a sub-question within it. So the third question was, is there anything on your wish list that you'd love to be kind of working towards implementing over the next little while? And I'd love within that to know your thoughts about how you might further involve the leadership group. Because as we've talked about, and I've talked about with a lot of people, there is only so much you can do without bringing in the leadership group and the managers of graduates to be a really cohesive part of the belonging strategy. So what have you got in terms of future plans, and where do you see the leadership community sitting in that, maybe, Jane?
Yeah, sure. Shall maybe I'll tackle the leadership piece first, seeing as kind of finished with the piece around the chairman. And I guess that kind of does start really with our chairman, Jamie, because he is actually our key stakeholder for our grad program. And I think that's really important in terms of setting the tone from the very beginning and at the top. I guess, going on from those manager briefings, one of the things that we are implementing and working with yourselves on this is those what we're calling action learning plans. And what we really want to do is get the grads to really drive their own career journeys, but using the times when they have those touch points, when they do the technical or the professional skills training throughout the next 12 months, to actually then take that time for reflection after that actual formal program or session, and actually think about what it is that they want to do next in that space. So what are the kind of potential blockers? What are the things that are going to actually also build, they can build? And then I guess then this is probably where we're hoping that this is going to change from a cultural perspective, and like I say, bring that leadership group into play. It's actually then going and speaking and having that conversation with their manager about it. So actually getting their managers, and we're kind of looking at the managers as those connector managers. So people who are actually going to kind of have that conversation and then give them that coaching that they need for the grads then to kind of make that next step or that next move. And we're doing that quite deliberately throughout the whole of the program, in a way that's actually hopefully going to sort of build that leadership piece and get the accountability not only from the graduates but also from our managers and our leaders of the firm. So that's hopefully I answered that side of the question.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. And back to you. I think there was the last bit you wanted to cover.
Yeah, and I guess what you mentioned obviously there, just what future initiatives we're looking towards implementing. And I think sitting in what I do and being very passionate about what I do, I must say there's always so much more that we can learn. There's so much more that we can do, and it's always changing and evolving. But I think the piece that's really important for us that we need to continue to build on is that element of balancing what seems like almost polar opposites, which is that digital piece with that humanistic piece. And I think, for us, when we kind of set up the grad program, and certainly creating that kind of hybrid or virtual program, we did a lot of things within the digital element, such as having 360 virtual office tours, remote experimental learning, creating avatars, using gamification. So there's like a lot we can do in that, or we have already started to do in that sort of digital space. But now I think also it's about striking that balance with that connection and belonging that you're not going to get with the technology. And I guess it comes into making sure that we kind of continue to bring that sense of purpose in all that we do on the program, and creating those spaces and times for people and our grads to actually have those connections and build on that. And I think, again, I'd like to sort of just probably finish off on a quote which Viktor Frankl, I think, is one of my and most people's, I'm sure, well-renowned gurus when it comes to these things. And he kind of like says that happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue. And life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. And what I would say here is, our roles as leaders of organisations is very much around trying to find ways to bring that sense of purpose in all that we do, so people can be successful in their careers.
Oh, that's great. I'm loving the quote junkiness.
I told you that. I did put a disclaimer on that piece there. Yeah.
Jane,
No,
can I jump in and just
Please.
ask a question? I actually circled purpose when you were talking about it earlier, and I think Lydia made a comment about purpose in the chat room as well when we talked about what is belonging to us. Are you already doing or planning to do anything with your grads around purpose at RSM, kind of and helping them really understand kind of why RSM truly exists and what it's about and what it stands for, and to help them connect with that more? Or is that something that's maybe down the track, or are you already doing something in that sort of space?
Yeah, I guess one of the things that really is important is kind of helping them understand our values and the way that we do things. And I guess, when it comes to that, we are actually going to have another session with our grads in probably about a month's time, where we're going to kind of bring them all together. So they would have then been a month into the grad program at that stage. And one of the things that we are actually talking about is how can we kind of start having that conversation, because purpose is, again, like everything else, it's very personable and very personable. But as a firm, I think our role is very much around kind of helping build those foundations in terms of the value piece, our missions and our values. And with 30 offices, we actually have probably quite a lot of differences, but it's actually understanding how those differences can all how all those differences can come together to sort of make a successful whole, as it were.
100%. Brilliant. Now, I'm a little conscious of keeping us on time. If anybody had any direct questions for Jane, please pop them in the chat box super fast, and we'll try and look at those now, and then hand back to Josh to not squeeze you too much on time. Jane, that's so valuable. I'm so grateful for you to join us. And Josh, one thing that we might even pick up on possibly through the chat and the rest of the section is one of Jane's comment there around digital versus connectivity. And the idea of how do we make sure that our digital components don't reduce or block connection, but are used to really smartly enhance it and make it easier, and that we blend that strategy together. So I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat box in case anything has come through for the moment. Not for the moment, but Jane, I think you're staying with us in case there's any more questions.
Absolutely, yes.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jane. Really appreciate it. And Josh, back over to you for the moment.
Great. Thanks, Jane. Thanks, James. I think we are, I think another kind of element to that perfect storm that we were talking about at the beginning of the session is there's a huge movement in business towards being purpose-led and being clearer about purpose, being clear about why they exist beyond shareholder value, being clearer about where they stand, companies being clear about where they stand on big issues like climate, equality, whatever it might, race, et cetera. And I think there's a huge opportunity with our grads, given that they are attracted to organizations who want to be about something bigger. There's a huge opportunity in our development programs to use purpose to our advantage to help them connect and feel like they belong. And so rather than just the quick, in onboarding or induction, here's our mission statement and here are our 5 values and whatever, look at them on the poster in the hallway type thing, to actually spend time pulling purpose apart and having senior leaders come in and actually connect the dots and talk about what are some of the challenges about being purpose-led. What is that purpose really about? If they were not pursuing that purpose, how would society be worse off? How are they better off because the organization is pursuing that purpose, so on and so forth. I just think there's a lot of leverage in creating belonging with current cohorts that are coming through in the last couple of years and will continue to come through in the next few years, to really use that to our advantage in building belonging. And it's something that our team who are on the call know that they're probably not surprised to hear me take the opportunity to bang on about this right now, because I'm banging on about it a fair bit internally at the moment as well. I've got a virtual team retreat coming up in 3 or 4 weeks' time, which will be all about that in some respects. But there's a big connection there between purpose and belonging for our grads. So we're coming out of this. James mentioned earlier about sort of future events and points of view and research and the like. We started an initiative last year called the Future Talent Pulse. I think that survey ran globally, 100+ organizations all over the world, and pulled all sorts of insights out about that. And we have recently launched our next Future Talent Pulse, which will have some of the similar questions actually to the first one, so that we can compare and contrast data in a pulse fashion, but we're also expanding the scope to cover areas like well-being and belonging, and others as well. James is going to put a link to that survey in. We would love for you to participate and sort of represent your organization. You'll also see it sort of come out emailed and that sort of thing as well. But James will put the link to that survey. It's live at the moment. The research is live. And we'll be releasing that information, that data and insights down the track a little bit as well. So let's dive in and talk about supporting hybrid belonging, virtual, hybrid, whatever that sort of situation is that you might be in. And the context is king. And you will have heard of us if you've been to our events or talked to some of our team before. You'll hear us talk about this idea that research shows that the transition from education to work is one of the most challenging that we make in our lives, largely because the environments are so fundamentally different. That gap from campus to corporate is so big still to this day, and that was the case pre-COVID. And what we are seeing sort of in our experience around the world, and to some extent in Australia, is that transition is, I guess, more stressful than it was so before. And so when we're thinking about creating that hybrid sense of belonging, that this is super important to recognize. You will have also seen this slide before if you've been to an event. If you haven't, absolutely worth looking up self-determination theory. This idea that when our 3 psychological needs of competence, connectedness, and autonomy are met, that we have a better chance of being the best versions of ourselves. And we use this to underpin how we approach all issues, really, be it belonging or transition or whatever it might be. And it absolutely plays a role in helping people feel like they belong, because if their need for connectedness is not being met, They will not feel like, they are less likely to feel like they belong. If they cannot work successfully autonomously in a new environment, they are not going to feel like they can fit in. And also, if they are not competent to do the job and not helped in their competence to develop competence to do their job, they're also not going to feel like they fit in or therefore belong. So this remains a really strong framework to think about how we address issues with early talent and grads and the like when it comes to their development and their transition. And we're also continuing to see this sort of unfold around the world as well. It's going to shift a little bit in Australia. Australia is going to make a faster move to hybrid than many parts of the world. Probably no surprise. Will probably remain the case as long as the borders stay closed, and other health initiatives are rolling out to protect. And but what we have found quite clearly, I guess, and Stanford found this as well last year, is that autonomy is in the rise, connectedness is on the way down, and that capability to be able to do that with our talent's capability to be able to be effective in that environment is the key sort of conversation, if you like. And for early talent, therefore, we need to think about how we create that sense of belonging all the way through the value chain. So this is not an onboarding issue. It's not a pre-boarding issue. It's not a capability build and an ongoing development issue. It's not a brand issue or a recruitment issue. We need to be thinking about and taking action, remembering that our actions and inactions count, to build a sense of belonging right the way through that, right the way through that sort of value chain, that cycle, that early career cycle, right from when they first come in contact with you, throughout that sort of the attraction, the selection, recruitment process, in that pre-boarding time, that 6 or 8 months, or sometimes 1 or 2 months that they might be pre-boarding with you. You want them to start feeling like they will fit in, they will belong. Now, hopefully they feel like that anyway because they took the offer. However, as the diversity of our cohorts has increased across different metrics and groups in previous years, and as we are expecting them to make that difficult transition either from home, remotely, or in some sort of hybrid team situation, fitting in is not as easy as maybe it was going to be in previous years. So even before they turn up for onboarding, their experience with you during pre-boarding is going to help them feel like they belong, fit in, or not. And so a great question to be asking yourself is, what did you do anything with your in your pre-boarding periods, I guess towards the end of last year and coming into Jan and Feb this year? Now that they're coming out of that pre-boarding and onboarding and maybe in that capability period, build and development period, this idea of helping them to feel like they fit in and belong is really, really key. But it is a cycle-wide, it needs to be a cycle-wide initiative. It needs to be a cycle-wide lens that we have on this, and really designed to do these 3 things. Anything that you are attempting to do to help people feel like they belong so they can bring the best versions of themselves to work, build those relationships in a hybrid, remote, or physical fashion if they are physically on site or in the office full time. These 3 levers, I guess, these 3 lenses really, really help. So anything you can do to support their autonomy, regardless of their sort of situation, anything you can do to enhance their connectedness, and anything you can do to build their capability to be effective and connect in that sort of environment that they're in, is going to help. Remembering what I said right at the beginning of the session, which was, COVID has not been democratic in how it affects people in industries, in ages, in countries, in companies, and in communities. And so everyone's situation is going to be different. And just because they are part of the 2021 cohort working in a hybrid team in Brisbane doesn't mean their experience is the same as the next grad sitting next to them, virtually or otherwise, who is in the 2021 cohort in a hybrid team in Brisbane. Everyone's experience of life in the past 12 months has been so varied and so diverse. And if that is not in some way, I guess, recognized or on your radar or whatever it might be, that may create barriers, I guess, to them feeling like they can fit in or belong. But those are three levers: supporting autonomy, enhancing connectedness, building capabilities. Three levers that you can sort of pull, or three lenses to think about building belonging for your interns and grads. So what does it actually mean to build belonging? Well, we've kind of developed this point of view, if you like, that it's really about four things. It's one, it's about helping people actually own their belonging. So belonging is not something that is done to you. Belonging is something that you decide for yourself. As the Anita Sands quote talked about before, diversity is a number, inclusion is a choice, belonging is a feeling. We're in control of how we feel. Now that is difficult sometimes, but we are. And so helping people understand to actually that they need to own their belonging and own how they fit in is really, really important. Now, belonging is a relationship, so it's a two-way street. It takes two to tango. However, everyone has a role to play in their own belonging. It's not something that belonging is not a passive experience. Belonging is a proactive, very active experience. And the second thing it means is that we need to feel like we belong, we actually need to promote others' belonging. And what we mean by that is behaviors, skills, behaviors, acts, habits, whatever it might be, that actually helps other people fit in and belong as well. So now we're, I guess, leaning into the inclusion conversation, and people actually, young people being actually taught how to be inclusive with those around us and support and promote others of belonging. The third one is helping people understand how to actually drive moments of connection. And this is really key for young people coming into the workforce for the first time. I remember when I was a grad, I remember sitting there thinking, should I go and introduce myself to that manager over there, or do I wait until I get asked, should I even talk to that manager? So on and so forth. But also with peers in the graduate cohort as well. So teaching people to actually drive those moments of connection with skills you might actually have been, and mindsets you might actually have been focused on in the development program anyway, like networking and relationship building and building strong relationships with managers or stakeholders or customers, but actually prioritizing that in these times when belonging is so much more important. And then the fourth one is showing people how to actually champion company values, which links to what I was asking you before about Jane, what I was asking Jane about before around really understanding the purpose of the company and the organization, really understanding the values and showing your young people, your grads and your interns, how to actually be champions of those things rather than coming into an organization, sitting back and looking out for who the champions are. Which is what a lot of, I guess, young people might naturally, might naturally do. So these sort of four really high level, I mean, they're principles, so they're by default high level. Again, a good lens is to think about, okay, how do you help someone actually, how do you help people to actually build their belonging? Some of the skills and the modules that we are finding most useful in development programs in these areas are these. So in terms of modules around owning your belonging, promoting others' belonging, building connections, culture champion, and remote belonging as well, but then fully recognizing something that you talked about, Jane. I think someone else made a comment on in the chat room as well, that the role of the manager here, as usual, is absolutely key. And so there are skills that for our managers that we can be helping them with as well, effectively leading teams remotely, creating inclusive environments, particularly for young people coming into the workforce for the first time in hybrid or remote ways, supporting belonging, building trust. Those four are four that we are quite focused on at the moment as well, in terms of helping managers be supportive and promoting of belonging as well. And then in terms of, I guess, really how in terms of what some of those things might look like. Actually, before I dive into that, when we come back to some of this content here around building belonging and it being something that we need to teach people and help people realize, particularly young people, that it's something that they need to own and promote and kind of take control of, and then thinking about some of the skills that we can help our graduates learn in order to do that. Are there any thoughts, feelings, contributions, or questions that anyone would like to add? And James, anything else happening in the chat room at the moment?
Brilliant. Thanks, Josh. Chat room, lots going on around some movements. No direct questions, so please, anybody feel free to come off mute quickly and ask them. There is an earlier question I wanted to quickly come back to for Jane from Erica, that was just asking Jane, with such a large group of graduates, she was just curious about the strategy in RSM for how you retain. How many do you try to retain? Is it a permanent pathway, or is there an application process at the end of the program? I thought I'd just throw that in quickly, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So very quick answer is, yeah, we want to retain as many of those grads as we can. They come with us on a permanent contract, and they are our permanent employees from day one. So we really do want to make sure that they stay with us. And one of, I guess, the main things that they do go on to do is their qualifications in accounting as well. So generally there's like a 2-year pathway before they get to the end of that as well.
Fantastic.
Hopefully that answers the question there.
Thank you, Jane. I'm sure it does. Hopefully it does, Erica. If not, please pop in. Oh, yeah, lovely. Just seeing your reply. Thank you, Erica. Anybody else? Question for Josh, question for Jane before we let Josh roll into our last little period, and we will be committing to finishing on time, everybody, as Josh said, no running over. Kelly.
No, I think I was just going to add, not necessarily a question, but just what you were saying there, Josh, is very much that piece around the managers. And one of the things that we're doing at RSM is really kind of created those connector managers. So really looking at ways that we can build on them in that connection piece role, rather than it kind of be that maybe an old hierarchy piece. And so I think it's also really important to think about kind of the way that we interact as managers with our grads as well. So yeah, agree with all those points.
Thanks very much, Jane. And Josh, just a comment from Kelly Pfeffer as well. Hi, Kelly. Lovely to have you with us. Kelly's comment is, which I'm 1,000,000% on board with, is around this really important part of helping graduates understand how to contribute to their own belonging, and getting away from this idea that as program managers that we have to provide and drive everything, rather than the better culture, as we've been seeing with learning for a while. Own your own learning, own your own development, help, encourage, support, provide the framework, but don't do everything for everybody, because it's just not feasible. We have to help people to look after themselves as well as we can. So I thought that was a great comment. And that's it for the chat box for the moment. Josh, back to you, as I'm conscious of leaving you enough time to finish up.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, James, and thanks, Kelly, for making that point, and Jane as well. I think what the community is maybe coming to realize is this two-way street idea of belonging. So your point there, Kelly, around, it's not always the program manager's job to organize every event or initiative or every buddy pair or mentor or whatever it might be. If you actually think about, if you put all your graduates on a bell curve in terms of performance over 3 years, and you think about what sets the 5% at one end of the bell curve apart from the rest, they're the ones that get out and do this stuff anyway, right? They're the ones that are taking that sort of proactive mindset to their belonging. Really, this has been happening already, but it has been, I guess, happening only with that sort of maybe top 5 or 10% of performers. They're the ones who put their hands up to volunteer things. They go and get their own mentor. You give them a mentor, like, I've already got 3. They're really active in workshops, in terms of participation and that sort of thing. They are creating their own, they're taking charge of fitting in. They're taking charge of their development and their own belonging in some ways. And I think that maybe what the industry community maybe is sort of realizing now, and maybe COVID has, and this idea of remote and hybrid and all this sort of thing has triggered, is that it is a two-way street, and we can equip people to do this. So it's not at all saying we don't want the pendulum to swing too far. It's not saying it is all on the grads, it's all on the grads sort of shoulders. Look after yourself. It's saying this is a two-way street. It takes two to tango. Belonging is a relationship. Belonging is a feeling. At the end of the day, the company can't actually control how you feel. And if belonging is a feeling that lives with the person, the company can only do so much. So we need to be, really, I think equipping our grads to think, I've got a job to do here to bring myself to the table and do my bit to contribute my belonging and promote that to other people, because without that I can't perform. Without that I can't be the best version of myself, and without that the company's not getting a good return on its investment anyway. So I think that's just an observation I wanted to share there. Let me know, James. We're coming into the home straight, so let me know if there are some other things. And at this rate, I'm going to finish before midnight, which is even better. So in terms of how, here are some, again, very sort of high level principles around how most of the world spent last year in some sort of virtual delivery mode. We're now seeing, particularly in Australia, the move to sort of hybrid development programs to match the hybrid work environment of the company. Again, I think Australia will get there quicker than most. Here in the UK, we're still in lockdown. It's just a way of life now. I don't even know what the outside world looks like. I'm not convinced the outside world's even there anymore, actually. We'll find out though, hopefully one day soon. But even in the UK, there's talk about moving to hybrid ways of working, hybrid development programs at the back end of the sort of second half of this calendar year. Who knows? More bite-size development delivered in a more bite-sized sort of fashion. So one of the really interesting things last year, and I'm sure many of you found the same, is that when we had to move to virtual delivery of recruitment processes, of development programs, of everything, there were maybe some concerns on the development side about, well, what can you really achieve in a virtual workshop? Do people really want to sit on Zoom or WebEx or whatever for an hour and a half? I don't know, but I guess it'll have to do now. And what we've actually found is quite the flip, that people actually really enjoy it when it's done well, when you've got strong design, when you've got strong delivery, when you've got engaging content that's timely and relevant and complete, it actually works really well. To let you in on something, in the last 12 months, we have experienced some of our highest quality scores globally in the history of the business. We're talking 99% satisfaction, 98% satisfaction, 96% satisfaction, often. I'm not talking one-off, like really often. It's been quite phenomenal. And so what more bite-size content bite-size is about is actually saying, well, actually, does it have to be 90 minutes? Does it have to be 60 minutes? What about 20? What about 30? What else can we do in this virtual and hybrid space? Well, I think it actually is opening up far more opportunities than we might realize. And one of my concerns actually is that we get back to some level of normal, is that people and organizations go, oh, great, let's go and run full day workshops again. Well, yeah, fine, if that's the best way to do it, but let's not write off the gains that were made in other formats in the last 12 months either. So thinking very cleverly about bite-sized learning, be it digital or live or virtual. Self-directed learning and accountability, which I guess we've all largely heard of before, but also this idea of narrative journeys, which again is not new, but plays a huge role in creating belonging. The importance of your program having a narrative, a narrative that goes over the 12 months of the graduate scheme, or 2 years, or whatever it might be, a really clear, centrally controlled, communicated narrative that tells people where are they going, where are they in the story, what is the story, what happens at the end of the story, as much as possible. But these development programs having a red thread that carries through them is something we've almost always tried to do in all of our work, like since forever. But in terms of belonging, people really benefit from a story, a journey that they can connect to, that they know where they're at, and they know kind of where it's heading. So ensuring your development program has a really clear red thread, a really clear story, is a really great way of continuing to build that belonging as well, and helping people feel like they connect. So in summary, and we'll check in on the chat room again. Here are some sort of takeaways. There are tangible commercial, personal, and human benefits to cultivating belonging. Early career talent in the COVID context make our role in supporting belonging even more critical. 3 levers you can pull, or 3 lenses to look at your development program in terms of creating belonging is around supporting autonomy, enhancing connection, and building capability. I love those, and it's based on psychology and science, which is even better. And 4 things that we really need to do to help people do that is give people the skills to own their belonging, promote others' belonging, drive connections, and champion company values. But something we have launched, we launched at the end of the year, every second month, brand new initiative called DBL Shareables. We all subscribe to newsletters. Not all of them are great. Some of them are fantastic. Not all of them are great. So our commitment with DBL Shareables is this is an every second month newsletter with content that's actually worth sharing. And so our aim there, I think we've released a 2nd edition now, we're preparing the 3rd, is that it is 3 or 4 or 5 sort of key pieces of content that we think is worth sharing, that's really relevant at that period of time. James has put the link in the chat room there. If you are not already subscribed, get on board. That list is growing. DBL Shareables is where it's at. And you are welcome to belong in our family if you don't already. James, back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Josh. Now, look at that, 7 minutes ago. Josh, can I presume you're passing back to me oh, look at that. Got the finish wave as well. Thank you so much, Josh. Really, really appreciate your time and everything that you've shared with us. Everyone, we've got 6 minutes left before scheduled close time. Would love to give people some time back, but as you are here, would love to make use of it. So we're a slightly smaller group now. A few people have dropped off. Would anyone love to just come off mute? Has anyone got any questions, any comments, anything you'd love to share? Please feel comfortable. You're among friends. Not like you to not come off mute and say something, Alex. You're always a comer off muter.
Thanks so much. I was
some
literally
feedback.
just writing. Thank you very much for the session, and thank you to Josh for staying up till midnight for all of us. And I have to run. But really good outtakes. I'm actually just sharing a bunch of it with my team. I've taken some sneaky screenshots. So I think there's some really good stuff we can share with some of our clients too. So thank you. And have an awesome day.
Good to see you, Alex.
And please feel free, Alex. This is the point of these sessions. We want to share. We want it to go out. We want whatever benefit can be gained in the industry. So don't feel guilty about sharing.
Excellent stuff. And get some sleep, Josh. See you later.
Right. Thanks, Alex. Anybody else, anything we can answer or talk about for anybody at all for a minute or two?
Hi, James. It's Jenny here from NBN. How you going?
Very well, Jenny. Lovely to see you.
Likewise. Thank you to yourself and the team for this session. It was really great. And whilst targeted towards early careers and graduates, there were some really great points there, excuse me, that I think, I could definitely share back with the broader team. Really liked the short and sweet piece around culture and, post-COVID, are we going to accidentally get to, the culture piece or deliberately? So I thought that was really great, and something that I think is really real for a lot of people, having that hybrid work environment. How do we make sure we keep that wonderful culture that we've built? So yeah, it was really interesting and insightful. Thank you. I may reach out to you to pick your brain as I unpack it all.
Yeah, 100%. Please do. We love to chat. We love to chat all things development, culture, people, talent. So please touch base anytime. Anything anyone would like to share about what you've done to drive belonging, or anything that you've seen work in your programs? That's something everyone always gets a great benefit from. It's got to be someone who's got a good initiative. That's okay, not for the moment. Brilliant. Well, in that case, if I'll take 5 seconds for any other questions, otherwise I shall wrap up and let everyone out a couple of minutes early. Brilliant. Wonderful. In that case, look, everyone, thank you so much. Josh, appreciate it. Appreciate all your time. As I said, we will email out somewhere later today or by tomorrow morning the link to the Future Talent Pulse 2.0. Would really appreciate everyone's input to that. The more data points, the more reliable the outputs. So the more we can get everyone involved, please share it on with other people in the community and your learning community. The more data we get, the more we can use the outcomes of it. So other than that, Jim and I will be in touch in general, and we'll be sending out information about our next event in a few months' time, which will at the moment focus in on mental and psychological well-being. So thank you, Jane, for your contribution and for joining us. I really appreciate it. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and bye for now.